welcome again this morning. We are in the series of the Sermon on the Mount, as you would know, probably better described as the sermon about the kingdom of God. Jesus, when he spoke this sermon, when he was talking about it, I believe it wasn't just a one-time event. Might have been a few times he would have spoken this out because it was so countercultural back then. It was so different to what they had known, to what they had taught. And Jesus brought this kingdom theology to the people. And the people we know were blown away. In fact, I reckon there would have been a few people going, okay, Jesus, can you just stop now? Like, I don't want to, okay, I know what you're saying, but I just don't know how to do that. Because it was really hard to get their minds around. And I think for us today, perhaps not much has changed. It is very countercultural thinking what Jesus taught through Matthew 5, 6, and chapter 7. I like it because he talks about this kingdom community that you and I are a part of. It's a community that doesn't call us to be perfect, to have perfection. No one is perfect in this world. We know that except the Son of God who walked this earth, Jesus. He was the only perfect man that ever lived. We are imperfect people saved by a perfect person. I like that we get to say that we follow Jesus. We choose to follow the works and the words and the ways of Jesus. And this sermon, if we embed this sermon into our hearts, I promise you, will turn heads in our community. It'll turn heads in your workplace. People will question why you do what you do. What do you mean you love me? I've just said to you this. You can't say that you love me. What do you mean? I'm telling you I don't like you very much, and you're telling me you want to pray for me. I don't understand that. Countercultural thinking that Jesus spoke about through these 3 chapters. I think today, as we get into it, this topic that Jesus spoke about, I think is going to resonate with all of us. It might be a little bit prickly for some of us. There might be some of us that might feel a little bit jittery on our seats, a bit of movement happening perhaps on the seat or inside your heart, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing because Jesus spoke, what we're looking at today, all about reconciliation. He spoke about forgiveness and how forgiveness is a huge part of the heart of God. Forgiveness for one another is massive in God's eyes. We ask for forgiveness from God. We're going to do that this morning. He expects us to throw forgiveness back, to forgive one another. He says, as I forgave you. People will know you're my disciples by the way you love one another. And often when you put love up there, right next to it sits the word forgiveness. Because the best way the enemy can get into you and I is to cause offense, is to cause something against someone else in the world. And there's a barrier, there's a wall that'll go up, and unforgiveness will start to set in. And sitting alongside unforgiveness is bitterness, sitting alongside bitterness is hatred, sitting alongside all the things that start to breed an unhealthy culture and also an unhealthy heart. So before we get into it today, I want to rewind a little bit to Nathan's, where he ended up 2 weeks ago. He stopped at Matthew 20, where it says, for I tell you, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. Jesus is saying here that we are not supposed to be righteous by keeping the laws. The Pharisees and the scribes tried their very best to keep the laws. We know that. To find righteousness is to live through Christ, is to have Christ dwell inside our hearts and to adopt all the works and the words and the ways of Jesus. Do we agree with that? Are we on the same page? Good. Jesus then continues after Matthew 5:20. He kicks into the last part of Matthew 5. So we'll see 6 comparative statements that Jesus makes that brings about a righteous person. He starts to teach on 6 things for the second half of Matthew chapter 5. We're only going to cover 1 today. And the topic we're going to cover, actually before we do that, the 6 things are murder, adultery, divorce, oaths, eye for an eye, and love for your enemies. All very meaty topics, aren't they? It's like a 3-course meal in every one of those. There's no dessert today. This is a 3-course meal, and I love it because it's countercultural. It's doing what the world says we ought not to do. Jesus comes with a different approach. So today we're going to kick it off in Matthew chapter 21. Actually, before I do that, let me just go one more thing. With all of these things, they had laws for. With all of these things, they had rules that they had to apply. So the Pharisees had 248 commandments. Sitting alongside those 248 commandments, they had 365 prohibitions. NOs, do not go there. You were not allowed to do 365 things. All up, there was 614 rules that the Pharisees had made up that you had to try to live by. I like that Jesus came not to abolish, he says, the law, but he came to deepen the law that God put together. So he says, yes, you'll hear it say all the time, you've heard it said, but I say. You have heard it said, but I say. He's talking about the laws that they know, the 600 and, what did I say, 613 laws and rules. And he's going, yeah, okay, they're there, but let me deepen your thoughts on that. And we're going to look at one today. So Matthew 5 verse 20 says this, you have heard, that it was said to you from people long ago. That's that statement. You've heard it said. Teachers of the law, the Pharisees, the Torah, the Old Testament, you have heard it said, you shall not murder. Anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. They knew that. They knew that it was the sixth commandment given to Moses in Exodus chapter 20. They knew that it says, you shall not murder. That's what they were taught. What they weren't taught was that you should not think bad thoughts of others. You see, they were taught you can have bad feelings about someone, you can hate someone, you can despise someone, but as long as you don't murder someone, you're okay. And they went, oh, phew. Good, so that means I can sort of write someone off, I can pay them out, I can slag on them, I can hate them, I can say all these things about them, that's fine, to their face, behind their back, that's okay, but just don't murder them, that's all right. Pharisees like, yeah, just don't murder someone. And you know what, probably not too much has changed today. I don't know anyone that actually wants to murder someone. I don't know if you do. If you do, we've got to start praying for that person. Right? Pretty full on. It's a pretty hectic thing if someone wants to murder someone. I don't know too many people who are like, oh, I'm going to go murder that person. Right? But what we do have in our culture is words. And you know that saying, sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt you? That's just like, just kick that one out of the park. Words are full on. Words tear apart. The tongue is a powerful, powerful thing that we have. So Jesus says this. He says, you've heard it said, don't murder. He says, but I tell you. Again, Jesus, remember, he's teaching seated. People are standing, listening to him. He's showing that rabbi authority. He's saying, but I tell you. In other words, what I'm going to tell you is actually deepening the law or bringing the rightness behind the law that was given from the beginning. But I tell you. He says, but I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answered to the court. And anyone who says you fool will be in danger of the fire of hell. What's Jesus doing here? Jesus is more, he's actually teaching on that, yes, there's an outward action that we all see, but perhaps Jesus is teaching on the heart. You see, there's outward actions, but there's also the attitude of our heart that we carry. I actually think that Jesus is more concerned the heart of somebody than the actions that we do. Because the actions are the overflow of our heart. He's teaching on the inward action of our heart. You see, we could say to somebody, it's easy to throw that anger out on somebody. You can easily see the anger when someone has to someone else. Perhaps we've all seen the anger. Been at school, we've all been at school. We've seen angry people at school, in the workplace, in the workforce. We see angry people. We even see them on the screen. It's pretty easy to see someone angry. It's pretty easy to hear someone say, I hate you. Or if someone says, I want to have nothing to do with you. Get out of my life. Those sort of statements, those hurtful statements. Perhaps there's people here that maybe can put their hand up and say, I've actually never said that. I've actually never told someone that actually I hate them. But I like that Jesus goes deeper under the surface. He goes, actually, what you're saying is one thing, but what sits in here, what rests in your heart, what gives birth is another thing. I'm going to start drilling down into that space. So he says, again, anyone, I'll go back one. He says, anyone who says to a brother or sister, raka, is answerable to the court. Now, we don't use the word raka today. Replace that word with fool. You know, if you call someone a fool or a jerk or a blockhead or a nitwit or whatever other words you want to put in place there that we can say that perhaps you and I have said to someone else before, my hand is not up for this one to say I've never done it. I certainly have done it before. When we call people names that hurt. He says if you call someone rocker and is answerable, then you're answerable to the court. Anyone who says you fool will be in danger of the fires of hell. Jesus is redefining murder not just as an action again, not just as an action, but he's redefining murder as an attitude of our heart. It's a deep issue here because people get under your skin so quick. So quick. In fact, Moran, who's a biblical commentary guy, very good, he says this. He says, Jesus exposes the essence of the scribes' heresy. To them, the law was always only a matter of external performances, never the heart. They were always about doing things, showing people things. It was never, don't look inside here. The outside of the cup's clean. Don't look in the inside. The cup's filthy on the inside. To them, the law was really only a matter of external performances, never the heart. Jesus brings the law back to the matters of the heart. The supervision of the kingdom does not begin by arresting a criminal with blood-red hands. It arrests the man in whom the murder spirit is just born. When someone wrongs you, when someone has done something wrong against you, you feel like you have every right to get mad. You feel like you have every right to say raka to them, say, you fool, you idiot, what are you doing? You have every right. The world says that. You have every right to do that. Why don't you do that? In fact, I think of it like this gas heater. If it's going to behave for me this morning, if I turn the pilot light on, that's as quick as it takes for someone to get under your skin. The pilot's light lit, it's lit. Someone said something against you. Someone ignored you. I'm walking down the street and Sam says hello to me and I didn't hear him. So Sam starts to say, what are you, Ellsmore? What? He didn't even acknowledge me. He didn't know I had headphones on. He didn't know I had a hoodie on with my little Bluetooth. I'm rocking down some music. And he's like, Ellsmore just ignored me. Gee, he's an idiot. Can't believe it. And what happens? He goes home and tells his wife, Meredith, you never know what our pastor Ellsmore did. He ignored me. And the flame starts to go, what do you mean he ignored you, Sam? Are you serious? He ignored me. I thought he was a nice guy. Now I'm thinking he's an idiot. And it starts to grow. And the flame just gets hotter and hotter, and it consumes your thinking and it consumes your thoughts, and then that thought might ooze out of your words and your mouth into someone else, and then the community becomes infected. And before you know it, it starts to spread. What this does, it stops any type of oxygen, God's breath, breathing into your soul. It stops any goodness from entering into your heart. If you go to high school, you're not void of this. Happens all the time at high school. Whispers all the time. Whispers turn into hate, turn into this and that, and this person's ignoring me, and I don't know quite why, but now I'm going to ignore them because they're ignoring me, and I don't like them because I don't know why. It just happens all the time. And Jesus is like, hang on a second, that is not kingdom way. That is not kingdom focus. There's a better way to approach this because this is going to swallow you up. This is going to breed bitterness and hatred, and nothing good happens in that space. Churches crumble in that space. Division happens. And the love of Christ just gets sucked away. enemy wins. Enemy's like, yeah, I've got under his skin. I like that Jesus comes with a better approach. He comes with a better approach. Jesus says this, therefore, if you are offering a gift at the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them and then come and offer your gift. Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. Do it while you're still together in that way. Or your adversary may hand you over to the judge. A judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will not get out of there until you have paid every last penny. You see, Jesus is offering a way to get out of that place that we can all get stuck in. Out of that place that consumes us, that place that becomes a super unhealthy place. And this is, I think, what we tend to do at times. We go, actually, I've got to go talk to Sam because it's a little bit frosty between me and Sam and them. I'm not sure quite what's going on here, you know. Like, I don't think I've done anything wrong, but I need to go talk to him. But I've noticed he's been giving me a bit of heat, a bit of curry, right? So I'm just going to turn the heat down, but I can still see the pilot. I'm still sort of, I'm just going to hold on to that for a little bit more just to make sure he forgives me. And then if he forgives me, I'll forgive him. Then we're all sweet and we're all good to go. But the pilot light's still going. I still remember that time when. Yeah, I'm holding that. It's maybe if I know it or not, it sits down here somewhere in the bottom of my heart that I've padlocked and I've closed up tight that no one else can get to but me. No one else knows it but me. And the pilot light is still going on there. And Jesus is saying, even in that space, if you have not offered 100% forgiveness to another person, if that pilot light is still going, he says, don't come to me. He goes, we can't ask for forgiveness if we can't give forgiveness. And the enemy's saying, hang on to that pilot light. Please don't let that pilot light go out, because what I'll do is I can just easily turn it up again. And I've won. And Jesus is like, hang on a second. Turn the whole lot out. Just shut it down. Take the heat out of it. Let me breathe back into your soul. Let me breathe healthiness back into your thinking. Let me impart to you the love that you can't find, but you can through me. Does that make sense, church? If we turn the pilot light off, what we're choosing to do is to find reconciliation. Friends, what we're choosing to do is to turn a heart of pain into a heart of prayer. We're choosing to say, yes, this hurts, but Lord, with your help and with your strength, come on, let's go forgive together. And in that space, we turn a heart of pain into a heart of prayer. I'm going to start praying for you. I want you to come to the place I'm at because I am freed from that. There is freedom, it says, found in Christ. I'm free from that. Let me start to pray for you now. What do you mean? I'm giving you all this. I'm heaping the coals on your head and you're saying you want to pray for me? Yeah, because you're suffocating and I'm free. I'm alive again in Christ. I'm free. I've turned a heart of pain into a heart of prayer. What I like about this statement here from Jesus is he says this. I'll rewind. Therefore, if you're offering a gift at the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you. It doesn't say that you have something against them. He said, even if someone has something against you, it's not your fault. You're saying, it's not my fault, it's their fault. They've got to sort out their stuff. I'm all good. Jesus says, even if they have a problem with you, in other words, if you go to high school, you will know that there is tension between you and your friends, and sometimes you don't know what it's for. In the workplace, you're like, why is that person being a little bit frosty to me at the moment? It's a Monday morning. Maybe they just did an extra coffee. It's Tuesday. Now they're still being for Wednesday. They're fully ignoring me now. What have I done? Oh, gee, well, they've got to sort that one out because I've done nothing. It's in their court. What about husbands and wives? I don't know about you, but sort of maybe I shouldn't testify, but maybe I can at times when I'm like, hey, I think we're sweet. And I go, hang on a second. Woo! What's going on here? Are we all good? Is everything like, oh, it's Friday, it's a weekend, but we don't feel quite right. What's going on? Well, let me tell you. Woo! Great. I had a friend's one knock at the door, and all he heard me say, he still holds it to me for this very day, all he heard me say was, "Hun, I apologise for everything." And he goes, do I open the door or do I walk away? There's those moments, right? We've all been there when you think you're okay with someone, but it's not reciprocated. And you're like, what's going on? Jesus says, hey, before you do anything, if someone has a problem against you, go sit with them. Show them the love that he shows us. Sit with them and say, hey, what's going on? If we need to apologise, apologise. And we say, come on, life's too short. Let's keep moving together. Now, here's the thing. It takes two people to right that wrong. If you can testify in your heart that is clean and pure, and you have laid it before the Lord and said, God, I have forgiven that person, it's now up to them. And they're not giving it back to you. They're not giving you the love that you're giving them. Leave it in his hands. Just leave it in the Lord's hands. You've done everything. You've done what he's asked you to do. You've brought it to the Lord. Come on, I'm trying to make forgiveness here. If they're not saying, okay, hey, we're all sweet, just leave it with the Lord. And he's okay with that. You've got to remember, this was being taught in a culture that was said, just don't murder someone. You can treat them every way you want to, just don't murder them. And Jesus is like, actually, it goes way deeper than that. If we are going to turn this world upside down, if we're going to have a kingdom countercultural type of living happening around us, we live to a different standard. We live to a higher standard, an achievable standard, not a perfection standard, but an achievable standard that says, actually, I don't operate the way the world does. I follow the laws and the writings and the words and the ways of Jesus, which means that I'm going to look very different to you, but different in a good way. Different that doesn't become obnoxious or distasteful, but that draws people in and says, hang on, what are you doing here? I'm intrigued with the heart that you carry. That kingdom culture type of heart. So here's the statement that we said a while ago, that if you're in that position, and I often call myself, it's an internal thing for me, sometimes I go, I don't know what to do here. I don't know what to do, because sometimes it's hard to do what you're called to do. Is it easy to forgive someone? No, it's not. Is it the right thing to do? Yes, it is. And the question is, what do you ask yourself when you don't know what to do? Ask yourself, where are we? What does love require of you in that situation? When you're stuck, when you probably think, hang on a second, the pilot's light is lit. I've got every right. When you don't know what to do, ask yourself, what does love require of you? What does the love of Jesus require of you? Why is this important? Why is this important? Because if you got the word, Matthew 5, 21 to 26, those 5 verses, 6 verses, it's powerful. Because Jesus says, before you come to the altar, before you get about doing my business, before you come to church on Sunday and start setting up seats and start preparing communion and start leading us in the worship, before you do any of this stuff, he goes, come to your heart, see, have you forgiven everyone? If you're holding offense to someone, he says, don't put your hands to service. He says, go sort out whatever problem you have and then come back to me with your gift. Back in first century, they might have brought pigeons to the altar for a sacrifice. The more wealthy would have brought goats to the altar. And he's saying, don't bring anything to the altar. Don't bring anything to me until you go and sort out your business with someone else. Jesus, one, is concerned about the heart, and two, he's all about unity. He's concerned about how we love one another, because people will know we're his disciples by the way we love one another. And love often means looking at our heart, turning the pilot light off if we need to, and going sitting with someone that we know perhaps we've offended or it's not quite right. Paul says in Romans chapter 12, he says this, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with one another. Live at peace with one another. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, like I said, you go to someone, you talk to someone, you offer your hey, I'm sorry, leave it with them. You've made peace. You've tried to make peace. And certainly I see in the church today, there is, it's all over the place with even division in the church. You know, we hear stories, media loves to hyperbolize things and pump it up and make the church look super bad, and then the church gets involved in it and comments. I heard comments this week on a church. I'm not going to say who or what, but you're just going, how about we just pray for that church? Because that church sounds like it's hurting at the moment. And the world is just after it. We're called to pray and to lift up and to make peace, Paul says, as best we can with one another. So as disciples, guys, as beachsiders who follow Christ, we are called to embrace and we're called to embed the teachings of Jesus. It is super clear that Jesus emphasizes in these verses how important it is to have that reconciliation towards one another. It's highly important in the eyes of Jesus. And I think about as we come into a time of communion this morning, where we sit at the altar, we sit at the cross, we sit at the feet of Jesus. And we might remember what he's done, and we might reflect on what he's done and rejoice that he has saved a sinner like me, and we ask for that forgiveness. And Jesus is very clear here. He says, don't come to me if there's unforgiveness that sits in your heart. Fix that first, and then come to me. So how do we do that this morning? Because we're going to go straight into communion right now. How do we do that? Because I suspect there are a few of us here this morning that might have one or two issues with someone else, where the pilot light might be on at the moment, but once upon a time it was a raging flame inside your heart. My encouragement to you this morning is make peace in your heart that you will sort this out. Ask for that forgiveness. Lord, help me forgive. I want to forgive. Have communion this morning and then go sort that out. Just go fix it up. Turn the pilot light off altogether. Bang. Go chat with whoever's been in your head or heart, maybe for a week or a year or 10 years. Countercultural living. People will question what you're doing. You're being freed from it. You're saying, hey, I want no more of this. I want to live freely and lightly. I want to walk in the unforced rhythms of grace. But maybe this is hanging on to me. Go sort that out. But make amends before you have say in your heart, I've got to go sort this out, Lord. This morning, giving you this talk, I've sat here and gone, is there anyone in my heart? Lord, examine my heart. Is there anyone that I need to ask for forgiveness or go to? Now, there's none that stands out to me. I might have 10 of you guys come to me this morning. I'm not sure. But I come with I want to have a heart that reflects the Lord. It says just, hey, I'm sorry. This is life. I want to love you. I want to pray for you. Reconciliation requires humility. It requires forgiveness. But more than that, I think it requires the love of Christ. It's always easy when we put those three together. It reflects this transformative power of Christ that lives inside of us. It reflects a heart, friends, that lives out love.